Americans love ground beef, but in the last 2 years, there's been an alarming number of recalls for millions of pounds of contaminated meat.
The price of a pound of ground beef is at an all-time high.
Ground beef now tops $6.75 per pound, the highest price ever for ordinary beef in America. Yet, when you cook it, some packages flood your pan with gray water, while others brown beautifully. And most labels leave you clueless about why. What if much of what you've trusted about your beef was built on silence? And recent rule changes mean those silent labels now carry legal weight? As we break down this mystery, one retailer's approach didn't just surprise us, it changed the game entirely. The hidden truth behind ground beef. At first glance, all ground beef packages on supermarket shelves look roughly the same. Bright red, consistent texture, neatly wrapped. It's easy to assume that what you see is what you get. But a closer look during cooking often tells a different story. Some batches flood the pan with gray liquid and steam like a swamp, while others brown cleanly, releasing just the right aroma and texture. This puzzling inconsistency isn't random. It points to a deeper mystery about ground beef quality and transparency. Why does beef from the same store often behave so differently in the pan? Because beneath those identical-looking packages lies a hidden truth that most customers never see. Ground beef can vary dramatically in its freshness, origin, grinding process, and handling before it reaches you. All these factors translate into the experience you have at the skillet, but few labels give clear answers. For decades, the labeling system left consumers in the dark, letting ambiguity rule the meat case. This gray flood that seeps into your pan is often mistaken for a sign of inferior quality, but it's actually a travel log of the meat's journey. When beef freezes or spends too much time in transit, ice crystals rupture the meat fibers, releasing juice upon cooking. It's less about bad beef and more about how it was processed and shipped. Still, shoppers expect fresh meat to cook like fresh meat, not a mystery stew. Adding to the confusion is how supermarkets prepare their beef. Most ground beef packages aren't ground in the store you buy them from, but arrive pre-packed from centralized plants hundreds of miles away. This case-ready practice allows for efficiency and consistency on the supply chain side, but introduces variables that contribute to unpredictable cooking results. The meat you buy may have been ground days ago and traveled long distances without an individual store's involvement. Meanwhile, the lack of detailed labeling compounds mistrust. Traditional packages often omit critical information like where the beef was ground, which specific cuts were used, or whether it comes from American-raised cattle. Without these details, a customer can't evaluate what they're purchasing beyond appearance and price. Understanding these gaps is key to unlocking why the pan-side experience doesn't always match expectations. Even more striking is how many established grocery stores, including those considered trusted, sell beef that fails simple transparency checks. Some don't identify the cut or tell you where the grinding happened. Others lump different sources together, delivering a homogenized product that masks specific quality differences. For price-sensitive shoppers, these packages sometimes seem like a gamble. Will the beef brown well or turn into gray sludge? This core issue touches on more than just consumer preference. It reflects a meat industry long accustomed to opacity. Beef has historically been allowed to hide behind vague labels, clouding accountability and leaving shoppers to fill the gaps with guesswork. But recent regulations changing labeling standards suggest a shift is underway. And soon, much about the meat case will become clearer. Before revealing who's leading the charge for transparency, it's important to understand the mechanics behind this industry-wide blur, the origins and impact of case-ready meat that dominates supermarket shelves. The journey your ground beef takes before it reaches your cart holds the key to why some pans flood while others sizzle. Case-ready meat and its impact. The phrase case-ready kind of means meat that just leaves the processing plant already ground, portioned in packages and labeled, so it can get put onto supermarket shelves right away. It's a bit different from the old-style setups, where meat might get sliced or ground fresh at the store's butcher station, with more, I guess, hands-on attention. With case-ready, that immediacy is reduced. And instead, you get a more efficient process, plus a steadier uniform outcome. And, honestly, this industrial method covers most of the ground beef that ends up in stores nowadays. At the processing plants, they run massive volumes through assembly line-style grinding, and then it's boxed up, sealed, and moved along. Because it's mass production, the meat moving through those facilities can come from many farms and suppliers. Then it gets merged into one sort of untraceable blend. The upside is that it looks consistent from pack to pack. It tends to last longer on the shelf, and the labor costs stay lower. The catch is that there's less connection between what you buy and the consumer's ability to track it down or double-check quality. High-oxygen packaging, usual in case-ready meat, keeps the beef's vivid red look going for as long as 2 weeks, way longer than the classic wrapping. That bloody red vibe feels more like a sales trick than true freshness. It is meant to catch your eye, but it can also hide how long the meat has really been moving around in transit. Then you cook the beef, and suddenly, the longer route plus the packaging tricks show up as extra moisture and uneven browning that doesn't look right at all. One sneaky ingredient under all that wetness is freezing somewhere along the supply chain. If the beef freezes, tiny ice crystals push through the meat's internal structure. During cooking, those damaged cells let out more water, and that's where the gray puddles come from, the ones that annoy a lot of home cooks. The Federal Food Safety Agency notes that the water leaving the meat isn't automatically a spoilage sign. It's just a normal outcome of the frozen trip from plant to plate. Case-ready meat plants often serve hundreds of stores across wide regions. For instance, one facility might supply dozens of stores spread across hundreds of miles. In many of those stores, employees never actually touch raw beef until it lands on the shelf. So there's a noticeable move away from traditional in-store butchering. That approach can reduce labor costs, but it also lowers transparency about freshness and origin, which feeds straight into the pooling mystery you see in the skillet. The economics underneath case-ready meat also kind of play a role. You know, centralized grinding and packaging maximize profit margins by streamlining operations and reducing how many skilled butchers you need at every store. But the trade-off is that this efficiency makes product consistency the big priority, not the more connected local supply chain feel, or even that on-demand kind of freshness. Customers basically trade trust and immediacy for uniformity and predictable pricing. Critics say this erodes the customer's ability to actually know what they're buying. Since there are no named cuts and no precise sourcing clues, ground beef turns into an anonymous commodity, one dominated by huge food conglomerates that control a lot of the supply chain.
A ground beef recall over possible E. coli contamination. Refrigerated services out of New Jersey may have been contaminated. This includes over 120,000 pounds of ground beef.
For shoppers who want quality and accountability, this factory-style setup can feel like a blindfolded gamble about how the meal will turn out. Still, the case-ready model hangs on because it works for large-scale demand. Plus, it meets safety and regulatory inspection standards. The beef is federally inspected and safe to eat. It's just often missing that fresh appeal you get from grinding right there on site. So having this background context helps explain why labels sometimes fail to provide details that really matter. Knowing the origins and impact of case-ready meat plants prepares us to examine how major meat suppliers shape this landscape. Behind the labels and packaging lies a concentrated industry that wields immense influence on what shows up in grocery aisles and ultimately on your dinner plate. The role of major meat suppliers. At the heart of America's beef supply chain stand a handful of colossal corporations controlling nearly all cattle processing and ground beef production. Names like Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef dominate the market, overseeing the majority of cattle slaughter and beef distribution across the country. Their reach extends into countless grocery stores, shaping what and how consumers buy ground beef without often realizing it. These meat giants own or operate the large case-ready plants that process beef for multiple major grocery chains. For example, one plant might supply packaged ground beef products for different stores under various labels, blurring any perceived brand differences. This oligopoly-like control limits competition, reducing the diversity of sources that might improve freshness or pricing. The economic impact is significant. Recent lawsuits accused these companies of colluding to keep beef prices artificially high by limiting competition. While none have been legally found guilty, combined settlement checks surpass $200 million, raising questions about market fairness and its effect on consumers' grocery bills. Meanwhile, average ground beef prices have climbed steadily, reaching record highs. Even stores with long-standing reputations rely heavily on meat produced through these consolidated pipelines. For instance, Kroger's ground beef largely comes from a dedicated Cargill plant, which also feeds brands found in other competing stores. This common source means shoppers at different grocers may buy beef with similar origins, regardless of the packaging or claimed quality levels. This consolidation also impacts supply chain transparency. Because so much beef passes through the same facilities, it becomes difficult for consumers to trace their meat back to specific ranches or cuts. Labels often omit or obscure such information, making it easier for companies to maintain proprietary secrets, but frustrating shoppers hoping for openness. Yet some companies are beginning to challenge this trend. Walmart, for example, recently invested over $250 million in a new beef plant aimed at sourcing cattle closer to the processing site. This effort seeks to increase transparency, traceability, and quality for certain products, showing it's possible to rethink entrenched supply models. Still, this Walmart initiative only covers premium cuts and specific regions, not the everyday ground beef many families buy nationwide. For the vast majority of ground beef, consumers remain part of the complex system dominated by a few players balancing cost control, efficiency, and limited disclosure. Understanding the dominance of major meat suppliers and how they shape the ground beef pipeline shifts the conversation from individual store brands to a broader industry landscape. It lays the groundwork for exploring recent laws forcing suppliers and retailers to be more honest with consumers about where and how their beef is produced. Some answers are coming, but the road ahead remains complicated, especially for shoppers trying to sift through label claims and hidden realities. Knowing how beef moves from supplier to store helps explain why labeling has often fallen short and why recent regulatory changes matter more than ever. Labeling laws and new transparency rules. For decades, the meat industry relied on vague labels that left customers guessing about what was really in their packages. Terms like "product of USA" often meant little more than a last quick touch on American soil, while the origins of the cattle, the cut of meat, and the exact processing details remained hidden. This widespread ambiguity allowed retailers and suppliers to keep customers in the dark, creating an environment ripe for misinformation. That all changed on January 1, 2026, when a new federal rule finally put teeth into the "Product of USA" label. Under this regulation, beef labeled as such must have been born, raised, slaughtered, and processed entirely in the United States. And companies are now legally required to prove it upon government request. This marks a significant step toward honest labeling, ending years of misleading claims that blurred the line between imported and domestic meat. However, the new law polices what is explicitly claimed. It does not require a company to say anything if it prefers to remain silent. A package that doesn't say "Product of USA" or fails to disclose its provenance owes the consumer nothing legally. This loophole means many products today still carry vague, non-committal labels that reveal almost nothing about their origin or grinding location, continuing the old tradition of secrecy in practice, if not in wording. Many stores are still counting on shoppers to overlook these silences. They rely on attractive packaging and carefully designed displays to mask the lack of real information about the meat inside the tray. Without a clear statement on place of grind, cut, or date, shoppers face an opaque choice, often unable to tell fresh, locally sourced beef from anonymous bulk blends. The regulation also demands transparency about the cut of meat used and the date and place of grinding. But again, many stores ignore these requirements or provide only the bare minimum. Whole cuts named on a package signal accountability, while generic labels like just "ground beef" represent a refusal to disclose more. Similarly, A visible grinding date helps ensure freshness, whereas the absence of one leaves consumers trusting an invisible timeline. Despite the rule's clear demands, compliance among retailers varies greatly. Some chains still fail to meet all three straightforward criteria: origin, cut, and date, causing consumer confusion and disappointment. Others have embraced the law, using it as an opportunity to boast about traceability and build trust with shoppers demanding more clarity in their food choices. The new regulations also open the door for consumers to hold companies accountable. With proof of origin required on file, false claims can no longer be swept under the rug as easily, providing legal tools to combat deceptive marketing. Yet, the full impact depends on enforcement and consumer awareness. Many buyers remain unaware that their rights have just been strengthened. Meanwhile, legal battles loom in the background. Some of the largest meat suppliers are under scrutiny for alleged price fixing and market manipulation, raising questions about whether transparency alone will be enough to restore faith in the industry. The settlement of multi-million-dollar suits hints at systemic issues affecting not just labels, but the entire beef supply chain. Understanding this evolving regulatory environment helps make sense of why some stores are still hesitant to fully disclose, and why others are stepping up to meet consumers halfway. The law has shifted, but habits and business incentives lag behind, creating a patchwork market where transparency is a competitive advantage rather than a standard. As we peer into specific stores and their ground beef offerings, this legal backdrop illuminates the choices retailers make, some embracing openness, others clinging to old ways. The next chapter reveals who is leading the pack and who is still hiding behind silence and smoke screens. Store by store, ground beef breakdown. After testing ground beef from 11 major stores, the results reveal a striking pattern. Only 3 passed the new transparency and quality tests, while 8 either failed outright or earned warnings. This ranking offers shoppers a crucial guide to where they can expect honesty and freshness, and where caution is warranted. The stark contrasts stand out not just in packaging, but in cooking performance and label information. At the bottom tier, Dollar General Market and Meijer represent the low end where packages fail all 3 main questions: no definite origin claim, no named cut, and no grinding date or location. Dollar General, a discount store, might not surprise anyone with its empty labels, but Meijer's failure is more notable, given its reputation and facilities promising fresh cuts. Yet, even here, the beef is federally inspected and priced accurately, showing that failure to disclose is not necessarily synonymous with unsafe products. Kroger, America's largest traditional grocery chain, sits squarely in the middle of this spectrum and illustrates the complexities of the modern beef supply. Having pioneered the case-ready model decades ago, Kroger outsources grinding and packaging to dedicated plants operated by giants like Cargill. While Kroger offers premium organic grass-fed options with detailed sourcing posted online, the everyday ground beef remains an anonymous blend often sourced overseas before hitting U.S. shelves.
Be aware that grass-fed ground beef is a very different product. It costs about 50% more than grain-fed beef, and we found that the leaner meat lacks the flavor and juiciness we expect in a burger.
Food Lion and other chains share similar stories, receiving beef from common Cargill plants, forming a vast pipeline serving multiple store brands across regions. This consolidation creates a bewildering marketplace where a shopper could buy nearly identical ground beef at stores hundreds of miles apart, hidden behind different labels. While the system ensures consistent supply and federal inspection, it dampens local accountability and erodes the meaning of brand loyalty. Aldi stands out as a curious case. Its beef often browns well and is priced competitively, yet sourcing shifts by region and suppliers remain undisclosed. This sealed box approach, coupled with the lack of in-store butchers, leaves shoppers guessing and relying on luck for a better pan result. The store's refusal to disclose details is understandable from a business perspective, but contributes to ongoing consumer mistrust about where their beef originates. Target's grocery section highlights another model, a retailer focused on logistics rather than fresh meat expertise. Lacking on-site butchers, Target sells pre-packaged ground beef arranged for convenience, often carrying a markup despite inconsistent cooking results. It was also part of a past widespread recall, underscoring the risks of complex supply chains where traceability is limited. Safeway adds a layer of theatricality with its visible butchers wielding knives behind glass counters, yet many ground beef packages in the store come pre-packaged from distant plants. The fresh counter is often a facade, and identical products may be sold at different prices based solely on packaging and presentation, demonstrating how marketing influences perception more than actual difference in meat. At the other end of the spectrum, 3 stores earned passes marking them as champions of freshness and transparency. Publix, Whole Foods, and Costco offer options grinding beef on site or sourcing from traceable origins with detailed labels, bringing consumer trust back into the equation. These stores balance price, quality, and accountability better than most, though availability and cost may limit access for many shoppers. This detailed store-by-store analysis paints a clearer picture of a market in flux, one that still struggles between old practices and new expectations. While the law pushes for honesty, the range of retail approaches means that consumers must stay informed and vigilant about what they put in their carts and on their plates. With the vast differences between stores laid bare, it's clear that cooking methods can also play a crucial role in salvaging your evening meal, turning even mystery blends into something worth eating. Cooking methods to rescue quality. Even the mystery blends, the anonymous tubes with no cut name, no firm origin, and vague dates, can be transformed by good cooking technique. The difference in your pan is often more about how you manage moisture than the meat itself, because the weary flood of gray water and steam is really just unwanted moisture. Controlling it can bring out true beef flavor and texture, regardless of packaging secrets. The first step is simple but often overlooked. Pat your ground beef dry with a paper towel before it hits the pan. Removing surface moisture prevents steaming and helps achieve a seared crust, the hallmark of properly cooked beef. Without this critical step, the pan bogs down in water, preventing Maillard reactions that create deep flavor and appealing color. Next, the pan itself must be hot, hotter than you might usually feel comfortable with when cooking. A scorching skillet causes rapid browning before the meat releases excessive juice. This quick sear locks in flavor and texture, turning that potential swamp into a satisfying sizzle. It demands attentiveness, but repays with every bite. When placing the beef in the pan, spread it out into a single layer, never overcrowding. Crowded meat lowers the pan's temperature and traps moisture, undoing your efforts. If you have a large batch, cook in smaller portions or batches to maintain heat and maximize browning. This patience takes a little more time, but elevates the final texture dramatically. Once the beef hits the pan, resist the urge to stir or break it up immediately. Give it at least 2 minutes to form a crust. This crust not only adds flavor, but reduces sticking and helps lock in juices. Breaking or flipping too soon causes the meat to release moisture and steam rather than brown, perpetuating the gray pulpy appearance many dread. Seasoning at this stage also matters. Adding salt after the initial sear helps draw out some moisture slowly and enhances taste without prematurely sogging the meat. Freshly ground black pepper or other spices complement the beef's natural flavor and the crust you just formed. Even the simplest seasonings can make a big difference in how your burger or sauce tastes. Understanding the science behind these techniques empowers shoppers to turn potentially disappointing ground beef into delicious meals. While clearly labeled, freshly ground beef is ideal, good cooking can rescue even less transparent packages when you know how to control moisture and temperature precisely. Your pan, after all, is where quality and technique meet, because browning was never about price tag alone, always about water control. This knowledge puts power back in your hands. With some patience, the mysterious gray floods can be tamed, yielding meals that rival those from trusted meat counters. Cooking well bridges the gap where labels leave questions unanswered. Even if the label leaves you guessing, your skillet need not lie. The right technique transforms every pound into something worth savoring, turning hidden truths into confident cooking victories. The price-quality disconnect. Behind the scenes of the meat case lies an unsettling truth. Price doesn't always reflect quality. In fact, shoppers often pay a premium for packaging, convenience, or brand reputation rather than fresher or better beef. This disconnect confuses consumers who assume higher prices guarantee a superior product. Many stores present identical ground beef products in different costumes. For example, the exact beef may be packaged and sold at different prices, depending on whether it sits behind a butcher's counter or in a pre-packaged tube. The apron in the meat department creates an illusion of freshness and skill, yet the same blend is often available on the shelf at a lower price. You aren't really paying new meat. You're paying for the presentation. Marketing techniques exaggerate freshness and provenance. Shoppers might see fancy labels boasting organic or grass-fed claims, but these often apply only to selective products and rarely to the everyday trimmings that form most ground beef. The higher price tags often reflect these claims, but core quality factors like grinding date or degree of processing remain unclear to most buyers. The widespread case-ready model has also contributed to price inflation. As decades of consolidation have concentrated power among a few meat companies, their ability to influence market prices has grown. Even amid lawsuits alleging price fixing and artificial shortages, the retail price of ground beef steadily rose, reaching record highs well beyond inflation or production costs. Some chains and warehouse clubs promote bulk purchasing to bring down costs per pound, but this too can mask inconsistencies. For instance, Costco's ground beef counter often sources from multiple animals and grinds unsold steaks, offering both quality and value. Yet nearby pre-packaged trays may source from national supply chains mixing beef from across borders, confusing shoppers about exactly what they're getting for their money. The disconnect further deepens when stores hedge transparency. While some products quietly comply with new labeling laws, others offer minimal information but maintain or increase prices. This paradox leaves shoppers paying potentially inflated prices with little assurance about the beef's true origin, freshness, or quality. Price disparities among competing stores can sometimes reflect regional sourcing, but often they reveal nothing more than brand strategy. Producers and retailers know price influences perception, so consumers routinely associate higher cost with higher quality, even when no supporting evidence exists. This expectation pressures stores to dress up ordinary products in premium wrappers. With this clearer picture of price and quality, it's time to look forward, exploring how the industry is responding and whether the future will finally bring the transparency shoppers have been waiting for. The future of beef transparency. The ground beef landscape is at a crossroads. After decades of labels that said nothing, recent regulations have begun forcing the industry to be more honest. Walmart's investment of over $250 million in a beef plant capable of tracing cattle raised within 250 miles marks a bold experiment in transparency at scale. It proves that when a major retailer decides to prioritize traceability, it can actually deliver.
Walmart has opened its first ever owned and operated case-ready beef facility. The 300,000 plus square foot facility will package and distribute Angus cuts sourced directly from sustainable beef to stores across the Midwest.
This new facility supplies roughly 600 stores in the Midwest and handles premium Angus cuts alongside regular ground beef. Yet, paradoxically, the everyday ground beef sold nationwide under Walmart's banner remains part of the same anonymous supply chain as always. Transparency has become a premium feature, offered only in limited regions and at higher price points, leaving most consumers with the mystery blends and vague labels they have always known. Such a divide underscores the challenge ahead. The technology and systems to trace beef to local ranches exist, but for now, market forces dictate that transparency is a luxury, not the norm. Retailers hedge between competing demands, promising provenance for premium customers while relying on anonymous bulk supply chains for mass volume. This split leaves millions of shoppers still facing uncertainty at the meat case. Industry-wide consolidation further complicates progress. The dominance of just 4 companies, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef, that control about 85% of American cattle processing, concentrates power and narrows supply options. Lawsuits alleging collusion to maintain high prices hint at systemic issues that transparency alone cannot fix, since pricing and sourcing decisions often happen in closed boardrooms far from consumers' forks. Still, there are encouraging signs. Some retailers like Publix, Whole Foods, and Costco stand out by offering fresher, better traced ground beef, setting examples that the broader industry might follow. Their commitment shows that balancing price, quality, and honesty is possible, even if not yet widespread. Consumer demand for accountability continues to grow, pressuring stores to improve openness. Increased digital traceability tools promise to revolutionize what shoppers know about their beef. Apps and QR codes linking to ranch origins, processing dates, and welfare standards could become common, making product of USA claims tangible rather than just words. These innovations have the potential to rebuild trust and provide clear differentiation in a crowded market. However, consumer education remains crucial. Even the best labels mean little if buyers don't understand what to look for or how to interpret information. Empowering shoppers to ask the right questions about origin, cut, and grinding date will help them navigate beyond marketing gimmicks to real quality. Transparency works best when paired with savvy consumption. The future of beef transparency is unfolding, and every purchase you make writes a part of that story. Ground beef may seem simple, but its journey from farm to pan is anything but. Knowing what to look for on labels and how to cook smart protects your plate and wallet. If this changed how you'll shop or cook, hit like and subscribe for more food insights. Thanks for watching.